We got a classic case of grinding brakes. This is a 99, I think, E150, E250, something like that. I don't know, the brakes are all the same, right? Ford van, let's go. I got all the tools I need. Let's make this short and sweet, eh? First thing we're gonna do, grab ourselves 13 millimeter. Get our caliper bolts out. We don't want those suckers in there. These caliper bolts are really thin. They feel like they're gonna snap. Take precautions, use heat, lubrication, whatever you gotta do. These ones are coming out just fine. When you're retorquing them, get them nice and tight. Don't snap them off. They're thin. Make sure your threads are clean when you take them out. Clean them off if necessary. Bada boom. Now we want to take us a decent sized screwdriver. As long as this caliper pushes back the way it's supposed to, we should be able to compress the caliper with a screwdriver. And we're not worried about hurting pads or rotors because they're getting replaced. Started pushing back pretty easily and then got tough on me. Kind of tough. Try to do this as fast as possible. There we go. Piston's all the way compressed. You could just do it like that. Or you can take the caliper off and compress it. Let's take this little screwdriver and get this brake pad out of here. Those little wings. Caliper's nice and compressed. Press back easy enough. Clean her up if you have to. And we're going to be doing the wheel bearings too. This pad will just come out of there. It was grinding and pretty thin on the outside pad. So that's that. We'll go ahead and get our caliper prepped here now. Take our little sliders out. Make sure you're using the high temp brake grease. Put a little dollop right inside that boot. Clean these up with a wire wheel if they're nice and rusty. These ones look super clean for Michigan. It's nice. We don't have to wire wheel them. There's not a whole lot of old grease on there to wipe off. We got a slider back in there. Make sure it's seated on both boots. Here we go. We'll get the other one. Pop it right out of there. Sometimes these are jammed in there. You gotta hammer them out. This one, pretty clean. I like it. A little bit of grease in the boot. Put grease all over this guy. Get her greased up. If you're in the salt belt like me, grease is your friend for the brakes. If you're greasing the right spots, make sure you know what you're doing. There we go. Just gonna put a little bit on the metal face of the piston. It'll help prevent some squeal in the future. And the ears, just a little bit, little light coat. And set this off to the side so it's not hanging. We'll just set it off to the side. Woo! All right, we gotta straighten our wheel up now. We gotta get this little wheel cover off. Hands are already super greasy. We'll go with a little flat head and gentle taps. Don't want to poke a hole in this greased dust cover. Just get her to tap off. She's starting to come. Or you can put some big old grips around it or something. Should have did this first. Wheel's spinning on me. Go. It's coming. This one's on there pretty tight. Wheel keeps spinning. There she goes. I use my wheel cover to put stuff in, and those bearings don't look good just from looking at the outside. So that was 21 millimeter on the lug nuts, 21 millimeter or 13/16, right? We'll bend this cotter key straight with our fingers because we got strong fingers. Get that cotter key out. Get this little cap off. Now we got our nut, and that is a 27 mil or 1 1/16. And this one's just coming off by hand. Just spinning it by hand. And our washer came with the nut. We got a washer there. We got a nut there. Put that in our tray. And the rotor just slides right off. We are replacing this ground up rotor. We'll just throw it off to the side and we'll clean up all this old grease here. And there's just metal shavings everywhere on the wheel speed sensor. So clean that wheel speed sensor up. I'm going to take my wire wheel to where the seals in. And where the brake pad hardware sits. I always get premium pads with new hardware. Wire brush in where the angle grinder couldn't get. Don't hit that wheel speed sensor. If you're going to use something like an angle grinder, just cleaning up where the brake hardware sits. Dust it. Try to get all this metal off the wheel speed sensor, because it is a magnet, so it holds onto that metal. There we go. It was coated with shrapnel. Because the grindage. The grindage. Clean that gunk out of there. Shaft is clean, spindle. Try to keep my hands a little clean during this. All right, now we are ready to prep our rotor. Now I'm in the salt belt, so I'm gonna put a little grease where the hardware sits, the brake pad hardware, just a real thin layer. Because it will rust and expand and lock your brake pads into place around these parts with all the salt and rust and dirt and snow. There we go. Just a little tiny bit there. A little bit on the hardware where the ears of the pads sit. We'll just pop this hardware on here now, so it's out of the way. And on, installed. Clips right on there. Bada boom. All right, time for the rotor. See if we can angle this dude over here without the sunlight killing the cam. Maybe we can put it, got my windows here. Aim it downwards a little bit. There we go, we got everything we need. All right, these brand new rotors come with races pre-installed. So with these bearings, came a race, that's what it sits in. If you're reusing your old rotors, they weren't grinding yet, you gotta install your races. New races with new bearings always. If you're using new bearings. First thing we're gonna do is get our inner bearing greased up. Hopefully you can see everything. I have a bearing packer. They're really nice. You just put your bearing in there and squeeze. Put a bunch of weight on it. And it'll pack the grease right into the bearing the way you need it. If you don't have a bearing packer, you can put a big old glob of grease on your hand and smack it. You're trying to roll the bearings while you're smacking the grease into them. That method works too. You don't need a grease packer. Grease packer's nice though. Put a little bit of grease in there on that new race in the rotor. A little bit of grease on the bearing, get her nice and greased up. Plop her in there. Maybe put a little more grease on the outside. It's better to have more grease than not enough grease. You know what I'm saying? Ugh, have lots of paper towels ready. Shop rags. There we go. Now this seal we're about to install, it's not like a crankshaft seal or anything like that where you got to worry about hurting it, you know, oil flowing out or whatever. You still want to drive it in there smooth. I've just got this little seal plate, sealer installer plate, fits perfectly over the seal, and I'm just gonna smack her on there, and there we go. Popped right in there, no problem. We'll take a finger full of grease and pack it in between that seal and bearing. There we go. That's good. Get 2 fingers full of grease and put it on the spindle. Just get a little grease going on the spindle where the seal's gonna sit and on the spindle itself. And 3 fingers. Go 3 fingers. Just a little grease for her. Help her slide on there easy. If you get any grease on your rotor, spray it down with some brake cleaner. Got a little grease on that rotor on the edge. Let me grab my brake cleaner. I don't want any of this brake cleaner to get into the bearing where it's just grease. I'm just gonna spray it on the towel. Wipe the rotor off. There we go. We'll pop the camera back over here on our spindle. Hopefully that's a good angle. We're gonna center that bearing through the spindle and pop it onto that seal's gonna go through the back there. It's gonna want to slide forward on you, that happens. Now I gotta pack the outside bearing just like I did the inside. Off camera here. Pack this inner bearing. Get it full of grease in the guts. I like to lean on this bearing packer with my knee. Well, I like to put my foot on it, but my shoes are dirty. You don't want to get dirt in there. There we go. We'll get a little grease in there. Put our outer bearing in, just like so. Now it's kind of holding up on its own. The grease helps. And we'll fill this full of some grease, about a finger or two of grease. And we're ready for our washer. Ooh, that's not the right washer for the job. It's supposed to have flat spots. Somebody's replaced that. All right. Now we got our nut. Come on, buddy. Thread's damaged a little? I don't know. I don't know. It's on there now. Socket. We're just gonna get it by hand tightness right there, get her set. Scoot forward a little bit. And we're gonna pack the bearing. We're gonna set the bearing. So just kind of spin the wheel a little bit, get that grease flowing. Now I'm tightening the bearing. Now you don't want to tighten too hard, you're gonna crush the bearing. There should be a torque spec for this. So that's pretty tight. I'm still spinning it though. Now we're gonna back it off half a turn. And then we're gonna tighten it pretty much just finger tight. A little over finger tight. I've just got my wrist around the ratchet. I'm not giving it much pressure. And then give it a little more. And it spins smooth. That's perfect. Perfect. Now there's a torque spec you should be able to look up. Right there is good though. That's a good torque. Spinning nice and smooth. I'll just fill the rest of this in with some grease. Bada boom. I think I got a video on replacing races. I'm not sure, I can't remember. And we got, put this little guy back on. Ooh, the teeth are destroyed on this guy. I don't know what happened here. I should check out those old bearings, see how crushed they are or whatever. The brakes are bad, the bearing's bad. I don't know what was going on. Something was going on. There's a couple teeth left, so I put the cotter key in between two good teeth. There we go. Now we're ready for our little wheel cap. This one was on there pretty tight. It's pretty deformed. It's been taken off a few times. Yeah, this one does not want to stay on there. There we go. Ah, what is going on here? Cotter key in the way a little bit. I don't know. It's a little hammered in. That'll do. That'll do. Now the rotor's all replaced, bearings are greased up, new bearings, perfect, perfect. Time for some brake pads. All right, so the one with the without the little clippy clips goes on the inside. It could be a little tricky to get these guys on here, just a little, sometimes. We'll see if these just go right on for us. Gotta line her up. Get her in between there. There we go, that slid right in perfectly. Sometimes you gotta move these little tabs up a little bit with your spare finger. Now, you would think you would put this on the caliper first because of the clips, but no, not on this style. Not on this style. In case we got any grease on that rotor. I think there was a little fingerprint there. A little extra brake cleaner for. And we're gonna pop this guy in. Push up on the clip so the pad will go in. Squeeze them together. And now caliper, put it flat against that inside pad, and then kind of slide it up to these ears. You can use a little screwdriver or your fingers and get one clip started, into its slot, next clip started. Come on, baby. Oh, we gotta press in these back little slide tabs so that they don't get in the way. There we go, that's what it was. The little slide in the back, make sure they're pressed all the way out. It's getting in the way. Now we're in our grooves. Perfect. Perfecto. And we've got our two little bolts. You might have to give the caliper a little wiggle jiggle to make them line up with their holes. You might have to slide the caliper up, down, back and forth. Let's see if we can get them to line up. There we go. If you can put your eyes on it from the back, it helps a little, but still not quite lining up for some reason. There we go. I think I finally found it. Yep. Here's that one started. That one started. Perfect. I think you guys have seen enough. Now when we press that caliper piston in, we pushed all the old fluid back through the hose and everything. So looks like a 3/8 or a 10 millimeter on the caliper bleeder. So we'll bleed the brakes out, give her some fresh fluid. These ones look pretty clean. Sometimes they're all rotted. You got to put heat on them to get them out, or they're just totally destroyed, vice grips. These ones look pretty good. It should bleed fine. We're going to tighten these bolts up in the back, and then pump the brake pedal, prime it so these brake pads squeeze to the rotor. If you try just taking off, you're not going to have no brakes. You need to prime that brake pedal. We're going to prime the brake pedal, tighten these bolts, prime the brake pedal, loosen the bleeders, bleed the brakes, throw the tire back on. Like I said, 21 millimeter lug nuts, and lower her down. That'll do it. A little brake job for us.